Memories. Support our fight to protect yours.
Hello, I'm Jackie Stewart. Welcome to another edition of Memories, and I have today someone rather special who I've known for a long time. Rory Bremner is one of the great people of taking people off in the wildest fashion. And so, first of all, good day to you, Rory. All in good form?
Yeah, everything's fine here, thank you. Yep, all well. I was tempted to say, whose voice is that? But
Well, that's my problem. You never know what you're talking to when you're speaking to Rory Bremner. Rory, you're of course a proud Scot.
Yeah.
And you're married to a proud Scot as well.
Yes.
So Scotland's been a big part of your life.
It has. I mean, I was born in Edinburgh. I'm sure because you're over the west coast, aren't you? You're Glasgow way.
Yeah. I was born in Dumbarton, which is about 14 miles out of Glasgow, towards Loch Lomond.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I pass it every time I go to the to Loch Lomond, that beautiful golf course there, and there's that wonderful, which is just a testament to you, Jackie. You see that garage on the right that you pass, and there's a wee plaque on the wall. And I kind of almost want to stop and salute every time I go past, because, of course, that's where it all started for you. I was the other side, Edinburgh. We were. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, and me and my brother Nigel. But everything was spent sending us to school. A wee boarding school just outside Edinburgh, which you may have heard about. It's Clifton Hall School. Does that ring any bells? Clifton Hall?
No, because private schools were never my speciality. I wasn't too good at school. I was very bad at school. I left school at the age of just newly 15. Mm-hmm. Never have I felt more happy than when I left school. I'm dyslexic, a severe dyslexic. So I couldn't read or write correctly. So I was pleased to get out of school.
Well, we must and we will. I should come back to that because that's a big thing that connects us. Many things connects us. But the school thing, Clifton Hall, was where Jim Clark went.
Aha.
Well, so that was the wee connection. And I remember, in fact, I can remember, it was, I think, 1968 when he was at Hockenheim, he died. And I can remember that day.
Yes, it was
one of my earliest memories, and writing a little piece about him at school because, the school was very proud of him, obviously. And I remember when you got in touch with me about 20 years ago, just when I was just marrying Tessa. And it was the very day, I think it was the 7th of April, and we both sort of thought, well, hang on, that's extraordinary. So there's a wee connection there. And I was at school just outside Edinburgh. It's a great place to be brought up because, you've got the coast and, I remember strapping the golf clubs on and sort of cycling. We even cycled out to North Berwick, I remember, and Gillen and all those golf courses around the coast. And I enjoyed my childhood a lot. It was... because Edinburgh, it's a town, it's a city, so you've got all of that. But you've got the coast, and you've got the Forth and the Highlands aren't a million miles away. So I loved all that. But then, as many Scots, including yourself, do, the first things we do when we start to pursue a career is we sort of head elsewhere, head south. And I was at university in London, and it was when I was at university in London that I started doing my shows. But Edinburgh was big for me because, of course, the cabaret circuit, the Fringe, every year the circus came to town, and throughout August, and Edinburgh just came alive. And when I was starting out, the early sort of late 70s and early 80s, if you'd been at Edinburgh at the festivals, you'd have seen Stephen Fry, Hugh Laurie, Rowan Atkinson, Victoria Wood, Rick Mail, all these great stars. And that was just when I was sort of thinking, I'd really love to do this. I'd love to be part of this. And I already did impressions at school of teachers. And so that was my party trick, really. I would sort of stand up and do whole Rowan Atkinson sketches and things that I'd heard on the records that we had at school, at home rather, which were all Flanders and Swan and comedy records, and Dame Edna Everage. Remember Dame Edna Everage, Jackie? Did you ever meet him? Did you ever meet Barry Humphries? I'm sure little Jonathan, who's producing this, a little Australian possum, will know her very well. So I was brought up, really, my brother and I just spent our time doing voices. So doing voices and getting somewhere with that and watching the Edinburgh Festival, I think it was quite clear which way I was going to go.
Well, you've made a living out of taking the mickey out of everybody else. Your interpretations of so many people around the world. That's what's made you as a performer. Whatever else you do and whatever else you're good at, your impersonations of famous folk is what the world knows you to be.
Yeah.
And it's a global one, because you can do the Russians because you've had that little education in Russia. And you could do, who was your favorite? Who was your easiest one to get into at the early time of your career?
Well, when I started off, it's back to Scotland, and I'm afraid I was a great big sports fan, and so it was people like Bill McLaren. Of course, you'll remember watching the Scottish rugby team back in the 60s and 70s, and I remember watching Wales the first time I watched it at Murrayfield, and Bill McLaren. My voice, my head would be full of Bill McLaren on Saturday afternoons doing the rugby reports from Golden Acre or Marside or Murrayfield, and he had those wonderful. He'd say the wonderful letter R. He'd say from Robertson to Rutherford, Rutherford to Rennick back to somebody else with an R at the beginning of their name. Oh, that's the end of the match. The referee's whistle goes, and they'll be dancing in the streets of Hawick tonight. I tell you, he's a great resident of Hawick. And many years later, when I married Tessa, whose family's stay, as they say, stay in Hawick. I was reintroduced to Bill McLaren and his family, who do a great deal for the charity. But it was Bill McLaren. It was Murray Walker, who you'll be familiar with. All that.
Oh, Murray Walker, and Murray's still alive, and he's well into his 90s now.
Yes.
And I spoke to him the other day, and I hope he might come on to memories. Let me ask you this then: as you progressed, you obviously had to go international with your interpretations of people.
Yeah.
You're well used to doing the American presidents, for example.
Yes. Well, over the years,
the beginning of that.
Yeah, I mean, the first time, it was probably Ronald Reagan, because we had this program called Spitting Image, you may remember, in the 80s. And Ronald, I wasn't one of the sort of the main cast. They would sort of bring me in when the main cast weren't available. But Chris Barry, he used to do Ronald Reagan. And well, he had that old shaky voice, and that was the first president that I became aware of as an impression. And then it was George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush, Bush Senior, and he had that kind of reedy voice, and he was kind of quite narrow-eyed. And after him came Bill Clinton. Now, Jackie, I had a lot of fun with Bill Clinton because, I was president from 1988. A lot of great things happened under me, let me tell you. A lot of great things happened under me, and I wanted to go back to the White House. A lot of great things happened there, and there are cupboards there that not even the cleaners know about, let me tell you. So we had a lot of fun with Bill Clinton, and after that it was George W. Bush, and of course, the funny thing is that we thought George W. Bush was kind of a bit different and a bit stupid, didn't we? I mean, people sort of always mocked his the way that he couldn't use language very well. He'd say, I know how hard it is to put food on your family. He'd say things like that. He'd say things like, and you've misunderestimated me. So for comedians, that gave us a lot of license to say, they said there was no link between Iraq and Al-Qaeda. There is now. But people, they make allegations about our armed forces. I want to know who the alligators are. All that sort of stuff. And then after that became Barack Obama. Now, Barack Obama, let me tell you, Barack Obama was a voice from a totally different place. And you need to know that he uses different emphasis. And he was a great orator. He would speak slowly with great authority and occasionally sound like Kermit the Frog. So I used to love doing Obama turning into Kermit and, singing John Lennon's Imagine to the tune of the Muppet Show, Imagine there's no heaven, it's easy if you try. There's no hell below us, above us only sky. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, etc., etc. But now, Jackie, we have Donald Trump. I think he's the best. And I am. There's no question I'm the greatest, Jackie, no question. That's what they say. They say I'm the greatest president. Donald Trump, and, I'm a genius. You know this. I'm a great genius, Jackie. Donald J. Trump. And, that's what the J stands for, genius, right? better American presidents.
I mean, you must have taken a fair number of the royal family or other very famous people. How did they take it? What about Prince Charles? Have you met Prince Charles?
Yes, I have a number of times, and I've got on my wall next door. He came. I did a play in London about 10 years ago or so, and he came along one night, and he wrote this lovely letter the next day. He said, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed the show last night, and your performance as a butler. So he didn't employ me as a butler after that, but we go back quite a long way. He had his 50th birthday, 97 I think it was, and Stephen Fry rang up and said, "Oh, my dear old thing," he said, "there were a couple of would you come and do a little skit at Prince Charles's 50th?" So we thought, what are we going to do? And do you remember Dr. Dolittle? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So, Prince Charles, it was all that thing about talking to instead of talking to the animals, we thought, well, why don't I do Prince Charles, Dr. Dolittle, talking to the vegetables? So it was, if I could talk to the vegetables, learn their languages, give them all the nourishment they need. Imagine talking to a turnip, moaning to a mushroom. I could even talk in Swedish to a Swede. I could converse with the curly kale, rivet the radishes, introduce the mustard to the cress. There's no risk of impropriety with a fellow dwarf variety, because runner beans won't run off to the press. And we did whole Dr. Dolittle thing. And he stood there and he watched that with the audience. And there's a wee line in it about, I know my onions, both the scallions and the springs. And he looked up and he said, but they're the same. And he's absolutely right, because of course scallions are spring onions, and he'd spotted that being a keen gardener. So he sometimes teases me about that. So just goes to show, Jackie, that Prince Charles knows his onions. But, a great sense of it. And the Princess Royal as well, who you know very well. I've always enjoyed the occasions that we've done, because they do so much with charities. But Mandela was another of the great voices. When I spent a lot of time, I loved Cape Town, and it was great fun trying to ring up restaurants and
get a good table.
A table overlooking Robben Island. The idea that he could sort of look over and sort of say, well, look how his life had changed. But and I met Mandela once when we were doing a show with David Frost, and he was sitting there in the green room, and I told him about a show that I'd been translating, which was being done by a South African opera company, but not any South African opera company, a company that was put together from the townships. And the woman who was starring, who's playing Carmen, in fact, in Carmen, was born and brought up in Khayelitsha Township, just outside Cape Town. So I thought, well, I'll tell Mandela about this. And he just said, you are making me very homesick. And then David Frost put his head round the door and said, when in those days they had Match of the Day was on before David Frost's program, and David Frost put his head round the door and he saw the football and he said to Mandela, he said, "Do you know, I once had a trial for Nottingham Forest," which is true. David Frost had a trial for Nottingham Forest, and Mandela just looked at him and said, "You were on trial?" David sort of shook his head. So he had a great sense of humour, Mandela. He walked into the studio and there were 12 people there from Ladysmith, Black Mombasa, and the 12 of them standing there. And Mandela walks into the studio and he said, "Oh my God, a jury," because the 12 of them standing there. But you knew David Frost, didn't you?
Yeah, very well. Yeah, great man. Died in the Queen Mary.
The Queen Mary. I mean, and we used to say, there had to be some great sort of royal connection that
Yeah.
He wouldn't go quietly. But how we miss him. I spoke to his wife Karina, who herself has had the most. I mean, imagine this, Jackie. She lost David 10 years ago, something like that now, maybe less.
Maybe less.
2 years later, her son dies. Miles died. He just died
terrible.
of a heart attack. And then she was diagnosed. She had a brush with cancer. So she had all this. But I spoke to her the other day, and she's going to have a big party when this virus is over. Instead of a coronavirus party, she says she's going to have a coronavirus party. But you and I, we remember David because he had those wonderful summer parties, and you never knew who was going to be there, and he got all these extraordinary,
all the best people.
and he would say, "Oh, Rory, Tessa, super to see you. Come on in, come and meet the Pinochet's." Come and meet.
What about the Russians? You were good at Russians, weren't you? You took the mickey out of them.
I didn't do those a lot. I have no collusion with the Russians. Let me tell you, no. Although I know Vladimir Putin very well, and I bought him his favorite ice cream. You know what his favorite ice cream is? Novichok chip. Novichok chip. He loves Novichok chip. But I used to do a thing about Trump and it was like it was Putin. If it's your thing to authorize the poisoning of former spies to get your kicks, that's Putin on the Brits. But I didn't do a lot of the Russian. I did a lot of Trump, and I spoke about Martin Luther King just then, and I knew him very well. Martin Luther King was we were very close, so close, very, very close. I shot him. In fact, that's how close we were. And I knew his sister Billie Jean. Remember Billie Jean King? And I was the last man she ever had, Jackie. I turned her. That's what happened. So you see you see how these stories kind of link into each other. So Mandela gets you to Frost, Frost gets you to Trump. So you're just getting a little picture of what it's like living in my head, Jackie.
Well, and that's great, but you've also got a great wife.
I have.
Who's a wonderful, and Scottish, of course.
Of course.
Who's a wonderful sculptress. And as you well know, I've got quite a lot of her work. She did my two doggies, Pims and Whiskey. But she also did two deer, actually, a stag and a hind.
Yes.
I've got a Highland cow with two calves, which I call it Helen, Mark, Paul, and Mark, full size. And I've got three of her. I've got three hippopotamus in the pond at home in Buckinghamshire. But she made that wonderful horse for the Crown Prince of Bahrain. Remember that?
Well, there's so much there. I mean, you've been wonderful. You've been so kind. I remember that day when we put the hippopotamuses in your pond, and that's not an easy thing to do if you think about it, because they've got to be just on the surface. But I said at the very beginning of this, your attention to detail and how you've achieved and how organized you are, and you'd worked out the levels of the pond and stuff, and you were telling everybody what to do. It was wonderful, and because we had to get them just on the surface. So there, and in this wonderful sort of setting in Buckinghamshire, these hippos, one with the mouth open. So you've been incredibly kind, and then Whiskey and Pims. But yeah, over the years, we've been very, very lucky to go to the Grand Prix in Bahrain, as you know, and to meet Salman, the Crown Prince there. And so a few years ago, it all sort of came together because there are close ties between the Crown Prince and the King of Bahrain and our Queen here. And her favourite horse, or one of her favourite horses, Her Majesty absolutely loves her racing. And Estimate was this great filly that won the Gold Cup at Ascot. It's the sort of the stayers race. It's a distance race, which, funnily enough, has been won the last couple of years by another amazing horse called Stradivarius with Frankie Dettori. But this time it was Estimate. And there are pictures when Estimate won the Gold Cup, I think about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe. And the delight on the Queen's face is wonderful, and her racing manager, and she was so pleased. So the King thought, well, I want to give some gift to Her Majesty, and Estimate was chosen, and they knew Tessa through yourself, I think, and it was actually her first horse sculpture, because she's done the hippos, as you say, she's done elephants before, she's done your dogs, but this was the first time that she did a horse, so it was a big challenge for her. But I know that Her Majesty's really pleased with it, and her children and grandchildren rather, they go and climb over it. It's at Sandringham now.
It's in a very good spot at Sandringham, and of course people can visit Sandringham in the summertime. The Queen's usually in Balmoral and so forth, and Sandringham's open to the public. And Estimate is sitting at the end of the drive. Nobody can miss it.
Yes, well, she told Tessa that. She said, so Tessa said, "Have you decided where you want to put it, ma'am?" And she said, "Yes, I'm going to put it there." And the blood sort of like kind of left Tessa's face at that moment. She thought, "Oh Lord, it's going to be so prominent." But she loved that moment. She loved spending time, as well as she did indeed when she did the dogs, which you very kindly gave to the Queen. So she spent many hours. And that little relationship goes back a way, because one of the first paintings that Tessa did was of Shirley Heights, which is a very, very famous horse, wonderful horse that sort of bred so many fantastic winners afterwards. And Tessa did a painting, and the Queen she didn't do the painting for the Queen. The Queen bought the painting or was given it. And so that was her first connection. And years later, when we went to see the unveiling of Estimate, Tessa said, "Oh, ma'am, can I show Rory the painting of Shirley Heights?" And she said, "Yes, you know where to go." And Tessa sort of headed off in the wrong direction. And the Queen said, "No, it's." And Tessa said, "No, it's okay. I can remember." So she went off, and of course, she took me the wrong way to Balmoral, to Sandringham. And after about 3 or 4 minutes, she got lost and came back. And we came back, and the Queen was still standing in the hallway. And Tessa said, "I'm sorry, we've gone the wrong way." She said, "Yes, I did wonder where you were going." But of course, being the Queen, she didn't sort of press the point. She just was rather amused by that. But they spent many sort of happy hours, I suppose, with over the times with the dog and the horse, talking about the things that the Queen loves most, which are, horses, racing, animals, and just as you know as well, just what a remarkable woman she is. And so Tessa was very lucky to have that time, and she owes that to you and that initial commission, really, to do the dogs. So I'm very proud of her, and she's currently in lockdown. She's gone back to painting now in lockdown. She's been sort of rediscovering that.
Rory Bremner, a very big thank you for coming on to Memories, and no doubt we'll be seeing each other probably at Goodwood.
I hope so. The sooner the better. It's been a pleasure, Jackie, and thank you as well for many of the wonderful memories we've had. I've never been to a Monaco Grand Prix before. We went in 2007, and you took us there and showed us around, and you are the king of Monaco. Well, there is a king of Monaco, I know, but they love you there. And also in Bahrain, when I sat next to you, you took me around the track, and that's a memory that I will always treasure, to actually go around the track at a decent speed, I might say, in a 2-seater racing car. And if that's not a great memory, I don't know what is.